I'm Matt Parker with Forbes Breaking News. At a House Rules Committee hearing on Monday, Representative Jim McGovern clashed with Representative Cathy McMorris Rodgers. The Massachusetts Democrat pressed McMorris Rodgers on whether oil companies have any responsibility for higher gas prices. The Washington Republican deflected and instead called on the Biden administration to implement policies to encourage more energy production. Listen in for more.
And it's really, I just have to say, personally kind of disappointing that every time we have these conversations, we begin with, Soviet Russia and socialism and all that kind of stuff. But since you wanted to go down that way, let me read something that's been bothering me all weekend about what's happening in this country and the direction this country is going in with what happened in Buffalo. Let me read the tweet from Liz Cheney, a member of the Republican Party. It says, the House GOP leadership has enabled white nationalism, white supremacy, and anti-Semitism. History has taught us that what begins with words ends in far worse. GOP leaders must renounce and reject these views and those who hold them. And I bring it up because I think you've helped set the tone for this hearing today with some of your rhetoric. I mean, the bottom line is that, America is in crisis. We're about to lose our democracy, and we're going in directions, quite frankly, that a few years ago, I think none of us ever contemplated that we would be faced with some of the things that we're now dealing with. And that it should be a wake-up call to everybody. And let me just also say, there's no denying a point that Mr. Pallone made, that oil companies are making record profits. They're making a lot of money. And if you don't believe me, you could believe the reporting of what goes on in their shareholders' meetings. I mean, they're giddy over all the money that they're making. And they're not producing any more. They're just charging more. Everyone understands the relationship between supply and demand. And I, for one, do not want to use this moment, yet another crisis with the fossil fuel industry, to be an excuse to, give them their wish list, everything they want. You talk about the Keystone Pipeline. Well, I mean, first of all, that's nowhere near being built. But if it was built, it would probably lower prices. It would lower prices by pennies on the gallon. That's what we're told. I think you get more off if you belong to a supermarket rewards program than you would if we invested all the gazillions of dollars in constructing the Keystone Pipeline. But does anybody, Mr. McMorris Rodgers, do you disagree that oil companies are making lots of money right now?
Well, I cited the Secretary of Energy just 2 weeks ago in front of the committee. She was asked that question about if there was...
Did the Secretary of Energy say that oil companies are losing money?
She said that she did not know, she did not think anyone was talking about massive, widespread price gouging.
The best way, I think if their profits are pretty well known. They're published. It's not like a secret. It's not my conclusion. And so it is, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this, and so it'd be helpful to just get this on the record. So your position is that big oil bears no responsibility whatsoever for higher prices at the gas pump.
My position is that the administration,
it's
since
yes
day
no.
one,
Yes
day one, has been implementing policies that are shutting down American energy. It started on day one with the Keystone Pipeline. It has continued.
That's not the question. My question is, my question is it your position that big oil companies bear no responsibility whatsoever for the higher prices that people are paying at the pump?
My position is I would like to see the Biden administration and the Democrats bear some responsibility for the policies that they are imposing that are contributing to shutting down American energy and therefore driving up prices.
That was a yes or no question, and I guess you don't want to answer it, but the bottom line is this month Shell announced a record-breaking $9.1 billion in quarterly profits, while ExxonMobil and Chevron recently pledged to use their high revenues to enrich shareholders through stock buybacks instead of providing relief at the pump for hardworking American families. That's what they said. So we can argue about whether you want to continue to provide giveaways to the fossil fuel industry. We could have a debate over whether that's the direction we got to go with something else. But, I mean, they are clear about that they don't seem to give a damn about what people pay at the pump. I mean, they've made it clear. These are their words, right? And yet, you know, this idea that somehow they have no responsibility, I get it. You know, corporations want to make money. But you would think at a time when we are dealing with a maniac like Vladimir Putin, who has launched this horrific invasion into Ukraine, which has not only resulted in higher energy prices, but higher food prices because of the breadbasket of the world, and he's cut off their ability to be able to sell food to the rest of the world. I mean, you would think at this point that everybody would, like, including big corporations, including big oil companies, would think that maybe this is a time when, you know, I'm not even saying that they should not make profit. I'm just saying that they shouldn't make as much profit, that there ought to be, I don't know, maybe some inkling of patriotism within them to say, we want to help get through this crisis until things stabilize, and then we can go on. But they're not. They're bragging about all the money they're making. You know, I mean, my father used to have a saying. He says, there's a fine line between being a good guy and a goddamn fool. And, you know, if we're sitting here saying that oil companies, when they brag openly about all the profits that they're making, they're giddy about it, somehow have no impact at all on what people pay at the pump, I have to tell you, that doesn't even pass the laugh test, in my opinion. I mean, you know, we can argue about, if you want Keystone Pipeline, you could make that case, which is years away, and again, we know it will make little difference at the pump, even if it was up and running right now. We could argue over whether the future is more fossil fuels or more clean, green, renewable energy, which I want. We could have that argument. But in this moment, right now, to suggest that somehow big oil should get a free pass, they have nothing to do with any of this stuff, they can't impact the price at the pump, I mean, give me a break. I mean, people get it. You know, and people are hurting because of it. And by the way, not just people who drive back and forth to work, but I mean, people who want to heat their homes, farmers are struggling. I mean, everybody is struggling. So I'm just like, you know, you go down the road of Soviet socialism and all that other stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, at some point, we have to call these corporations out. You know, I'm not saying that's the only thing we need to do, but to suggest that at a time when they're making record profits, you know, and as I pointed out, that they pledge to use their high revenues to enrich their shareholders through stock buybacks, that doesn't bother anybody. I don't know. It bothers me. And so, I mean, I think this is the right thing to do, and I hope we move something forward, and we'll see whether we do or not.